Hey folks, this is Kelani. With every update that makes its way onto the PTR, I can't help but wonder, when is this stuff actually going to make it to the live servers? When will patch 8.1.5 release for realsies so we can all sink our teeth into the new wave of content and see what it's all about? There's new profession items which look to be incredibly powerful, new story content leading up to the Crucible of Storms, and the Crucible of Storms itself, though that one will probably arrive a little later on. But this all comes back to one question: when will patch 8.1.5 hit live servers? We have a few clues to work with here to narrow down our potential timeframe of a release date. The first comes in a form of an event. So you probably know by now, patch 8.1.5 includes several pieces of the Warlords of Draenor expansion being added onto the Time Walking events. So we'll go from the Burning Crusade all the way through Warlords of Draenor now, which is a pretty long cycle for sure, but the main point here is that you can't have a Warlords of Draenor Time Walking event without patch 8.1.5. Right now in the PTR, the Warlords of Draenor Time Walking event is scheduled for May 28th, which tells me that the patch absolutely has to land before that date, otherwise it's going to mess up the schedule of events going forward. On live servers, May 28th is marked for the Burning Crusade Time Walking, which also leads me to believe that we'll have patch 8.1.5 before that date. The Time Walking events progress by expansion, from TBC to Wrath, then Kata, then Mop, and now Warlords of Draenor will be tacked onto the end. If that cycle starts again with TVC before Warlords of Draenor has a chance to take its turn, we won't see the new Time Walking event for half a year. That's not something the dev team would want to happen, seeing as it's part of the excitement package of patch 8.1.5. So May 28th is the absolute latest this patch could go live, but I would be very surprised if we made it another 3 months without this patch being introduced. So that's the worst case scenario sorted out. What about a best case scenario? How early could we see this patch? Well, for that we have to look at the current story progression on live servers. The war campaign led up to the Battle of Dazar'alor raid, and to get the next chunk of story content we'll have to finish off the raid, quote unquote. Even though plenty of people have killed Jaina on normal and heroic, and more than a handful have killed her on mythic at this point, that doesn't mean the story has progressed at the same rate. We didn't see the story quests for Uldir until every wing of the Looking for Raid difficulty was open for the Uldir raid, so it's a safe assumption that the story will continue and we'll see some more story quests relating to the raid after the final wing has been opened up in LFR. We just and so got the second wing this past week, and the third and final wing, which includes Jaina, is currently slated for February 26th, which is 2 resets from when I'm making this video. I doubt the patch will drop in the same week as the last wing of LFR, but when that last wing is open, everyone will have a chance to see the bosses, complete any related quests, and move on in the story. Which means everyone will then be ready to start the next section of the war campaign, which explains what happens from here, where the factions go, how the Crucible of Storms works into everything, the start of the Naga invasions, but most importantly we've checked all of the boxes relating to the new allied races. We've been told time and time again that we have to earn the trust of the Kulturans and the Zandalari trolls before we'll be able to play them, and the last piece of the puzzle was the Battle of Dazar'alor raid. With that slotted into place and taken care of on every front, the new allied races should become available very soon after, which means patch 8.1.5 will have to release right after the final wing of LFR has been made available. But what does that mean? 1 week? 2 weeks? We're not too sure. I would hedge my bets that 2 weeks will probably be more likely, seeing as the dev team made sure to have 2 weeks in between each section of LFR. Maybe that's their current expectation for how long it takes players on average to get through the new LFR wing, or maybe that's their current standard for giving players enough time to get something done before sliding another piece of pie onto our plate. No matter what the reason, Blizzard likes 2 week gaps right now, so 2 weeks between Jaina LFR opening and patch 8.1.5 is looking fairly likely right now. That would put the patch 8.1.5 release date on March 12th. It could be a week earlier for March 5th or a week later for March 19th, but I think the 12th makes a bit more sense. And just in case you think that's too early for the next patch to hit because the Battle of Dazar'alor raid just opened up, here's a few things to think about. The first is that the raid wasn't tied to a patch at all. It just opened up on its own with the start of Season 2. I guess if you want to be specific, you would say that the raid was actually a part of patch 8.1, its release was just delayed by quite a bit. If the patch releases on the earliest date we've talked about, March 5th, that would be 84 days after patch 8.1 went live, or 12 weeks. The schedule that we followed for the most part in Legion was 77 days, or 11 weeks, so we're already past that with the very earliest date based on our guesstimations. I actually think it will go later than that, so once again this patch will probably arrive later than the patches did in Legion, which means we probably shouldn't place too much value in the whole 77 day thing anymore, even though it held true for the vast majority of the previous expansion. The point here though is that there were 77 days between the major content patches in Legion, which is a pretty decent time, it worked out really well, and this patch is actually going to go over that, so it's going to be longer in between this patch than it was through most of the patches in Legion, so there isn't really any way it can be too early. Another thing to take into consideration is that patch 8.15 will be staggered like other patches. We won't get it all at once. The story quests will likely be time-gated across several weeks but should start straight away. We'll get the allied races straight away for sure, though you'll have to meet the requirements and complete the introduction quest lines. The profession items might be included from the get-go as well, but the Crucible of Storms will absolutely be delayed. We'll have more story quests which lead up to the Crucible, much like how the Battle of Desert Allure worked, and it will become available at a later date. Now, while this is a new raid, it's not technically a new raid tier. All of the gear from the Crucible of Storms is the same item level as the Battle of Desert Allure loot right now. 400 for Heroic, 415 for Mythic, etc. That might change slightly before it goes live, but if it doesn't, this raid also has a bit of a time limit on it. It's a new raid, sure. We need to do the story content that leads up to it, fine. But if the dev team waits too long on this raid, no one will need the gear. We'll play through it once or twice, but if it's not worth going back every week because the gear isn't all that great, then it's going to be a very short-lived raid. So it's probably going to be delayed, but not by a huge amount. Certainly not as much as what the Battle of Desert Allure was, I would assume. So early March works perfectly for patch 8.15, and if I were a betting man, I would put my coin down for March 12th. But we might be able to go a little further than that. Part of patch 8.1.5 involves Magni and the Heart of Azeroth. We're still working to fix things, even if you forgot that was supposed to be part of the entire dealio going on right now. We're not supposed to be just loading up on Azerite to unlock a few extra traits. That's supposed to somehow fix the big sword in the ground, which you might have also forgotten about because, well, it hasn't really been talked about for several months at this point. Seriously, that kind of stuff kind of got left behind if you think about it, but alas, we'll see something relating to it very briefly in patch 8.1.5. Without spoiling too much, and honestly there isn't really anything to spoil anyway, Magni asks Mother for help in Uldia. Mother suggests transporting her to the Chamber of the Heart, where we got our little amulet at the very start of the expansion, so she can figure out exactly what's going on with our slumbering titan of a planet. She does a few quick checks, and when Magni asks for a time frame, she replies with 77 cycles. So that 77-day thing that you've been laughing at me for might not be over yet, and this quest could be a sly little nod to how everyone was going crazy about every patch in Legion being 77 days apart like clockwork. Hopefully they can get back to some sort of reliableness on that front. It would make these videos so much easier because that would be no guesswork. The 77-day cycle probably relates to patch 8.2 and its release date. Blizzard has said in previous Q&As that Magni and the Heart of Azeroth will be the key focus as we progress into patch 8.2 and beyond. The Heart system is being overhauled to be more similar to a talent system from what little we know about it. Hopefully we'll get a lot more information on that after 8.15 goes live, and then 8.2 will go onto the PTR. So that's really exciting, and we know we're heading down into Nazjatar to try and put a stop to all of the Naga nonsense going on, so maybe we find something down there related to the Heart of Azeroth and saving a dying world. But the takeaway from this questline is basically that whenever patch 8.15 goes live, 77 days from that point is around about when patch 8.2 should go live. If that's not the case, then we can all call Mother a great dirty liar. But even if we don't get patch 8.2, we should at least have some answers after those 77 days are up, which leads us into the next patch and the next big chunk of story content. So, either which way you look at it, after 77 days, we should get something. So it's really important when 815 comes out, then we can start that 77-day clock. So to recap real quick, we'll probably see patch 815 sometime in early or mid-March. I'm betting on March 12th. Patch 8.2 might arrive 77 days after that, which would be May 28th, or somewhere around there if 815 releases a week earlier or later than what I'm guessing. And if 8.2 isn't there, then, we'll get something. It shouldn't be too long until we get our hands on some new content, but that's it for this video. When do you think patch 815 will go live? Do you think March 12th is bang on the money, or is it maybe too early or too late? Leave all your thoughts in the comments section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to join these lovely guys and gals, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave. If you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.